Good day, humans. Proud to be working with TreeStuff.com and bringing you this overview and review of the Nick Araya splicing series produced by TreeStuff.com. Learning splicing, it's your life on the line. With that, let's get a little bit of background on Nick and see why it is that he's the one that's training us and what kind of qualifications he has to give us the training that our lives are going to depend on. He initially started climbing trees in school in Wisconsin. He started working in the arboriculture industry, has worked for, as he says, some of the best and some of the worst companies around, but he's moved up through the companies and to the current point in his career where he owns his own tree service in LA called Tree Care LA. Put a link in the description below. All appearances, it looks like absolute top-notch company. He is a board-certified master arborist and is a member of the American Society of Consulting Arborists. He's been splicing since the early 2000s and even ran a small business a couple years ago called Splices by Nick. So he has a whole lot of experience splicing rope. I first looked into splicing when I got my first bag of rope. Actually, I made a video last summer on it in which I got 20 feet of 3/4 inch 10x Tech. This right here. And I got it, and that's exactly actually what I was hoping I would get. But once I got it, I didn't really have any clue what to do with it. So I started looking into splicing online, getting instructions. A lot of the manufacturers have, some of the manufacturers have good instructions on their websites, some have horrible instructions. And so it's kind of hit or miss. But after doing some research on the Samson website, I kind of fumbled my way through and was able to do my first splice, which is simply a berry deadeye for a porter wrap. And this is the deadeye you see in the videos that I use with my smaller porter wrap. What I didn't know, and I still just realized I haven't done on this, is a proper whip stitch. To do a proper one, you really need to get the training series, and he goes through step by step the lock stitching, the whip stitching. He goes through all kinds of tips and basic splicing techniques and advanced splicing techniques and everything, and it's pretty in-depth. Back to me and my splicing. So that was my first splice and turned out pretty good. After that splice, I started looking into it more, and it was at that point that I picked up the Samson splicing manual and Samson splicing kit from Tree Stuff. Started experimenting with some more splicing. After getting those kits, I started moving into double braids. I gave up, honestly, with the instructions in that splicing manual, and in addition to, you can find some decent videos online and stuff from the manufacturers, but without specifically being shown everything, it was just, I would make attempts and I wouldn't know little tips and tricks how to do things, and I just kind of gave up, honestly. It was hard. It was incredibly hard, and I couldn't do it. There wasn't an instruction there, a dedicated course. Just kind of sat on the back burner for a while, and I did almost no more splicing. I did a little bit more single braid stuff. Single braid is relatively easy, and it's the best place to start, in my opinion. So it was at that point Nick Bonner asked if I'd be interested in going through the training, and I said absolutely. With access to the videos, what you're getting is advice from someone who's done it over and over and over and can show you the little nuances of the splicing and really get in depth in what needs to be done and how to do it, the right way to do berries, how to get cores out from extremely tightly woven ropes, all that stuff that you need to know to be successful. And it really is pretty awesome because I started having a lot of fun with it. This was actually quite a few months ago, because then I was having the shoulder problems and it was causing me pain getting those tight berries, so I kind of had to give up for a little bit. But I'm back into it, and honestly I was wanting to wait to do this video until I was done splicing, but it's turned into one of those things where I'm never done. There will always be a project, so what you see isn't what I have planned. It's never ending. Moving on from my first splice on that deadeye, started doing some more of the single braid stuff. That's the bread and butter, that's the easy and the quick stuff, and the stuff that's great to learn on. Along with the splice videos, I was also sent a training rope kit. It's not currently available on the website, but it should be. I'm not sure exactly when, because the rope manufacturers are kind of in a state of transition where they're putting out new models and whatnot. But the ropes that I got to practice on, 8 feet of 10x Tech 3/8, 35 feet of All Gear Husky half inch, 20 feet of 10x Tech half inch, 20 feet of Aztec, 12 feet of XTC, 22 feet of T-Rex 7/16, 12 feet of 3/8 T-Rex, 5 feet of 10 millimeter Epicord, and 25 feet of 1/4 inch M Steel Blue. In addition to ropes that I have gotten, just bought on my own or through bags of rope, because I always like getting bags of rope in. It's awesome. We can go through kind of some of the things that I've done and some things you can do as well. So with the single braid Deadeye kind of being the easiest, and there's different ways of doing it as well, the Barry, the locking Brummel, and Nick goes into all these in his video series. Some of the other ones I've done, this is just 20 or so feet-ish of 10x Tech. I did a locking Brummel. You can see I have a whip stitch on there. I really did this one as a spider leg balancer. Not super heavy limbs, this is something like 5,500 minimum break, so it's not the strongest, but you can always get bigger ropes. But I find it very handy with this Deadeye in there. There's no knots to get in the way when you're making your pro stick hitch on your main rigging line. Just makes it a whole lot more convenient to use. So that's a fun project that really paid off because it comes in handy and saves a lot of time. In this bad boy, oh, so beautiful. So I made this Deadeye. This is a 7/8 Teufelberger T-Rex, like 32,000 plus average break, I believe. This is incredibly heavy duty stuff. And if you've watched my videos, you've seen it on the wall, but you've never seen it used because I can't bring myself to use it. It's just so pretty. I don't want to get it dirty. An incredibly awesome rope. It's nice and thick, and it feels just so good on the hands. I've really fallen in love with the Teufelberger T-Rex line. It's a pleasure to work with, really. This is a really thick, really long Deadeye sling that I made for working with real heavy wood, big porter wraps. Use other stuff because I don't have a need to get it out, and unless I do have a need for something this big and heavy, I'm just going to sit on the wall and look pretty. And unlike my original one, I did a proper back splice, which is another thing he shows you in the video. Do you have to have the proper back splice? No, but it's the right way to do it, and it looks the best and is the most professional. You'll see quite a few of my projects don't have the proper back slice because I get fed up and end up just whip stitching, cutting, and melting. Alright, so moving on from a basic Deadeye, get into ultra slings. I've made a couple of those as well. This is one I commonly use. You'll see this in the videos as much, and this doesn't have the proper back splice on the end. As you can see, just whip stitch and I melted it over. It's not going to take any strength away. It's still functionally the same, but really lacks professionalism, so I need to make a new one. That's something. Like I was saying, it's one of those things where there's always another project to work on. It's never ending. And it's kind of a nice thing though. It's kind of cathartic sitting at your desk splicing. If you're not familiar with ultra slings, you should be because they're amazing. When I first started, I was using a lot of whoopee slings, and those are great. Unless you really need that block or anchor point really cinched up tight against the tree, it takes a bit longer to install. Ultra sling, you can take your block, one end of your sling has an eye. With your block or whatever terminal end you have or rigging point redirect, you just take it, go around your stem, so you just find the closest pocket, go through, girth hitched, and you're ready to go. There's no adjusting of ropes, no anything. Downside of this is, if I weren't able to get the rope through that pocket, I'd have to use the next one up. And you can see there's fairly significant amount of play in there, so you're going to get a lot further falls, a lot more strain on the ropes, the rigging point, the anchor point, everything. If it's a tricky drop or dangerous, probably don't want to use this setup, but for everyday stuff, it's the fastest and most convenient I've found at least. So this is an Ultra, and this is 3/4 inch 10x Tech, really strong stuff. This is another Ultra sling, but this is 1/4 inch Am Steel Blue. As thin as this stuff is, it has a minimum break of over 7,000 pounds, I believe something like 7,700. Really what I'm going to do is, I quit my job 2 weeks ago and I start my new one Monday, but when the bank account fills back up, I'm gonna get a Omni block and combine the Omni block with something like this. That way you have a super light on the saddle rigging point that is plenty strong for just about anything. So that's what this one is, and again, just real lightweight, real convenient, real fast to use. You can just even girth hitch this end onto your Omni block and go to work. Another ultra sling I did with the Teufelberger T-Rex. I do use this one quite a bit for light duty rigging mainly, but it's kind of a utility purpose and use it for whatever. Again, pretty strong stuff for how small it is, but I forget what the NBS on this is. And just like the Deadeye sling, this is a 7/8 Teufelberger T-Rex, and it's just so beautiful I can't bring myself to use it in the tree because I don't want to get it dirty, so it just hangs on the wall. But same thing as the others, just bigger, stronger, 32,500 average break, something like that. Beautiful, beautiful rope. Now, combo, moving up a little bit in difficulty. This also is an ultra sling, but I put a thimble in this one. So Not much more difficult really, and you can have your own rigging redirects and thimbles and whatnot. Pretty awesome, pretty handy. I find that I use these a lot more than I really thought I would, and I love them. Just as with my other Teufelberger T-Rex ropes, I don't use this. It sits on the wall because it's so pretty. Proper back splice on here, lock stitched the way it should be. All right, moving on, this is a different type of I-splice for single braid. The other one I had was a berry splice. This is a locking Brummel, and this was just a practice piece. I don't use this, nor would I use it. It was one of the first ones I did. I just kept it around as an example, although I have ripped apart and cut much more rope than I care to admit. On that point, in the beginning of the series, Nick says, get rope, practice, cut it off, throw it away, practice again, do it over and over and over. I couldn't agree more. I screwed up so many times beginning, and until you really get a feel for it, you're going to screw up. And if there's any doubt in your mind at all that it isn't done completely properly, don't use it. It's your life at stake, or the lives of others if it's a rigging splice. And get some rope. If this sample kit isn't available when you watch this, order anything really, even small single braid, all gear Husky, 10X Tech, the Teufelberger T-Rex. Just get a bunch of smaller diameters so it's a little cheaper, and it's actually kind of pretty much just as easy to splice. Practice splicing one after another. And you can see I practiced a whip stitch on this end and a lock stitch on this end, things that he goes over in his video, shows you how to do it with the upsides and downsides, and the upsides and downsides of the Brummel versus the berry, all that in his videos. Something else that's not done properly, but I just kept around as a sample, just buried one end in another to make an endless loop. This was one of the first ones I did. You can see it's not proper, so all the tension is being loaded on one side, so that's weak as can be. That's not right. But again, one of the things you can do with this training if you need loop ropes. Moving on to more advanced things, although not more difficult to splice. Actually, these are pretty easy to splice as well. We have a Loopy. So this one I actually spliced before I got the training series and just kind of did on my own. And I don't use it. I probably need to take it apart, and actually I think I'm going to use this for something else because this is, I think, 1/2 inch am steel blue. So this is pricey and incredibly strong stuff. You can see I've got picks and stuff all over the place, even though it is back spliced. Am steel is a single braid just like the other single braids, and you can do the same things with it, but it is a class 2 material, which Nick goes over in his series, differences between class 1 and class 2, and it does have to be spliced differently. So definitely handy to have that information from him to know how to properly splice class 2 materials like this. Pretty easy project to do. It's a good beginner one. I found it nice to start with. It's not super difficult, and it's pretty rewarding because you can use the product as soon as you're done. All right, in the same kind of general category as the Whoopie is the Loopy. I don't even know if I have those backwards, or I always get those mixed up. But again, another one that's really easy to do and real rewarding. You can do it pretty quickly and start using it right away. But for rigging points and whatnot, you basically just have a spliced eyelet on one side, and a big berry, and it's an adjustable sling. So another project you can do. Same thing as the other one, but this is with a 1/4 inch am steel. So even though this is incredibly small stuff, as I mentioned earlier, over 7,000 pound minimum break, this is really strong stuff and very adjustable. You can do a lot with it. Now we're getting into the stuff that kind of caused me to lose interest initially, the double braids, because it's a completely different ballgame. This is where it's make or break. Either you continue going and you learn to do it, or you get disheartened like I initially did and just kind of give up, because it gets much more difficult at this point and much more time consuming. So here we have some Aztec, and I did 2 eyelets on these. It's not a rope for use. They're not done properly. I would not trust anything on here. As you can see, I don't even have lock or whip stitch on them because I know I wasn't going to use it. I just kept it around as an example of one of the things you can do. This is kind of a double berry cover core situation, and so these get pretty complex. You really, really want to make sure to just get some scrap rope, although not old rope. You want to use new stuff because it's a lot harder with old rope. But just get some new double braid and just start practicing, doing splice after splice to really get proficient at doing it before you ever create anything that you're actually going to use in a work situation. But if you stick with it and you learn how to do it and you go through all of Nick's training and you practice, you can do all kinds of awesome things. This is, I think, 7/8 polydyne. I got it in one of my bags of rope, and because I stuck with it and learned how to do it, I spliced a deadeye onto this incredibly strong stuff. And this is what I use with my larger quarter wrap. And it's pretty awesome. Having stuff like this around and having these skills to make things like this is awesome. And then once you've done them over and over, you can really start creating things that you can actually use. What we have here is 10 millimeter epicord. This is incredibly strong stuff for its size. And I have 2 properly spliced deadeyes on here. And this is actually what I've been using for a VT on my rigging rope when I'm using it in conjunction with my Mazda. And so it's a whole lot of stress and strain on this iron eye, and it holds up great. You know, doing them over and over, you know, you get to the point where you have confidence and you know it's going to hold. In some of my videos from just even a couple of weeks ago, I was climbing, my lanyards were a Sterling Tritech and I believe a Sumac, I can't remember at this point, but the lanyard was set up just like this one, a rope snap with a double fisherman's, and that one I had a micropoly and eye. This is my sappy tree lanyard that I can get all dirty and everything. That's why I have a mechanical on there, because it doesn't get affected as much. And it worked well, you know, it served its purpose, but it was infuriating when you're trying to pull it out of a crotch and it gets stuck because that knot's too big, so it would get caught up. Sometimes you'd have to climb back up to get it, and so it was a huge pain in the butt. And when you have the ability to splice, you can do stuff like make your own lanyards. So I just spliced this one like a week or so ago. Got a whip stitch on there, it's black, kind of hard to see, but you know, the poison ivy, and you know, this is a micro pulley setup with an eye and eye. That's kind of what I've gravitated towards. I like using them because occasionally I'll use it as a center attachment point line, almost like a short climb line. But you know, when you know how to splice, you can do all this cool stuff and put rope snaps on the ropes and everything, and not have that big bulky knot that gets caught up into crotches. And with splicing, you can do a whole bunch and use your imagination and just kind of do crazy stuff. I haven't really gotten there yet, I plan on it, but this is one of the things I've made, and it's a adjustable friction saver. Piece of T-Rex, got 2 dead eyes spliced onto a ring with whip stitches, and then I have it in a Prusik over an Aztec with another ring. So you can do all kinds of crazy stuff like make your own friction savers, etc. This was by far the most difficult splice I've ever done. It took like a whole weekend almost, and I think my 3rd or 4th try is when I actually got it. So this is a Yale Kernmaster. Got it in one of my bags of rope. Didn't really know what I was going to do with it, and so I was like, I don't know, splice it. Is it spliceable? That's another thing about ropes is before you splice, check with the rope manufacturer, because some ropes, even though they may be the same construction of another, will have slightly different splicing instructions or measurements on them. So you always want to double check with the manufacturer. So when I looked into this one, what I got was that it is spliceable, but it was incredibly difficult. The cover braid is so tight and everything, and it's core dependent, so it's really important to do the core just right. After a long time, I was finally able to get it. And I mean, this is like rock hard. It took so much to bury this in. I still got to put a whip stitch on here. Once I was able to do this, I was like, all right, you know, definitely a good feeling of accomplishment when I was able to do that. Another useful tool, especially with these, is using the forums, because I think a lot of the information that I used in splicing this came from, I believe, the TreeBuzz forums. So thank you, gentlemen, over there, and actually Nick Bonner even posted some stuff up there to kind of help out with the guys that were asking about splicing current mantle ropes. Overall, I am incredibly happy that I took the time and the effort, because it was significant. It's not something you can just jump into and get it all within a few hours, but having that skill available to you, you're more valuable of an employee than others can. You know, when an employer asks, you know, what do you bring to the table, you can say, oh, I can splice all my own ropes. Having those skills makes you an asset to an employer. It makes you look that much better than the next guy who can't. Definitely something I would want to add to my repertoire of abilities to make myself a more valuable employee. Nick does a great job of demonstrating all the techniques and describing the little things that he's doing while he's manipulating the rope. There were a few things I found that kind of helped me when I was first starting. Some of them I still use, some of them I don't. But I thought I would just toss them in here in case you're wanting to get going. You know, maybe these techniques will help you out a little bit as well. One of the things I like to do is I'll splice at my desk, and I don't have a good anchor point there. So if I need an anchor point, I actually come either out here in the garage or out on the patio. And so what I was doing for stuff that doesn't need super, super strong, you know, Herculean effort bury, I would take My SRT loop I use for when I'm SRTing in my logger boots. And you can use any kind of a loop, even just an endless loop like this will work just fine. But you slap it around your foot, hook it in with the beaner, and you can use that as an anchor point. So if I was needing to vary some of this epichord, you can hook it in, and you can really get a pretty decent milk on there. You can't get as much as if you had a dedicated anchor point, and so that's at what point you get up from your desk and stop being lazy, and you go to your dedicated anchor point and really start putting some muscle into it and manipulating it like it's proper. But just something I found handy. Another thing I like to use, initially I don't use them so much anymore, I will depending on the rope, but is a pair of snap ring pliers. I'll show you what I mean. So here I have just a loop of poison sumac. I don't use it for anything. But if I was going to be splicing this, one of the things you have to do is you have to remove the core from the cover. And so to do that, you have to open up in between the cover strands. When you're good like Nick, you can grab a fid and do it without anything else. You can kind of bunch them up and separate them and go in there like that and remove the core. But that was probably the hardest thing for me to learn how to do. I just couldn't get it for some reason. It is pretty difficult. So one of the things I was doing was take a pair of snap ring pliers, and once I separated them a little bit with the fid, you can get the snap ring pliers in there and kind of open it up. And that'll give you, obviously not right here because I'm not taking the time to do it right, but it'll open up that cover for you pretty decently. It's where you can remove that core a little more easily. Now, once you get experience and are advanced in the skills, I'm sure you don't need to do that, but I've found these to be pretty invaluable when I first started. So what is it you need initially to get started splicing? Really not all that much. If it's something you're interested in but aren't really sure, just get yourself a decent piece of single braid. You do generally want to use new stuff. It's a lot easier to splice, but if you don't have new stuff, you can do it on old stuff. With just a few household items, you can actually get quite a bit accomplished with single braid. What you would need, don't have to have, but you can make a wire fid out of a coat hanger, as I did on this one. Some Sharpies to make your marks. I find it handy to have multiple colors. Learning process, I would sometimes get them confused or mixed up, and so having different colors kind of makes it easier to differentiate between the different marks until you get to a point where you're used to doing it and then you don't need multiple anymore. So some Sharpies, good pair of scissors, indispensable. You gotta get a decent pair. I don't know how much these cost. I think my mom just happened to have come up with a pair missing, no comment. Some electrical tape. If you're gonna be doing like an ultra sling, something like that, kind of handy to have at least two different colors. That way you can not have to follow the ends to figure out which one's which all the time. You can just look at the color of the end taper and go through. And then for your whip stitch, any kind of twine will really kind of work. It's not the proper stuff, but that and a pretty big needle, so it makes it easier. And with that, you can actually accomplish a lot until you get to the point where you realize you want to keep going, and that's when it's time to get some tools that will make it easier, more convenient, make your time more profitable and productive. So I'll show you what I have in my kit and what I like to use. So first up is a proper wire fid. This is indispensable. You can get by on big single braid with a made up one, but not on the tougher stuff. You've really got to have a good one. On this one you can tell I've taped up the ends. That just makes it a bit easier on the hands when you're really pulling a tight berry and really got to muscle into it. Definitely want to get one of these. Tape measure, proper whipping twine. I have here just a bunch of tubular fids. These just really make it easy, convenient, and fast to take all your measurements and to feed through for like locking Brummels and things like that. So definitely want to get a bunch of tube fids. And you can open up holes and you can get ropes in through the center cavity there. That's definitely handy. Pair of needle nose. I like these ones. They're real long and skinny, so you can really kind of burrow in if you're just needing to grab like one strand or something like that. And also good for like opening covers, kind of a guy showed with the snap ring pliers. So good pair of needle nose pliers, smooth needle nose pliers. That way they're not picking while you're using them. I'm sure you can't really see these too well, but a couple different size needles. So I have 3 sizes here that I commonly use. a real big needle for the big stuff, and then dropping down in size as you go. One thing I forgot, gloves. The Showas give really good grip for burying. You can really get a good pull on them, but they wear out pretty quickly. The friction and the heat just kind of balls this up and makes it fall off, so then you have a big mess all over the place. But if you really need a good grip, these are great. Else I found that I picked up the steel boarskin gloves like a long time ago and never really found a use for them. Parents. But I didn't have a use for them, and I found a use because you guys served your use 33 years ago. But anyway, the steel boarskin gloves, they're really tough. They give a decent enough grip, and they don't wear out. So, I mean, I'm not saying you have to get these ones, just a pair, probably leather. Really come in handy. That way you're not burning your hands. I've been at that point where I was doing splice for splice barehanded and got kind of painful. That's pretty much it. And I mean, all these tools are available from TreeStuff.com, and they're not really all that expensive. You can get a really good kit for not a lot of money. You can do all the splicing for you and your buddies because, let's face it, not many people know how to. Just yesterday at my interview, my new employer, was asking, what can you bring to the table? What can you do, if we're slow in the wintertime? And this is another skill set that you can say you can do. Hey, I can splice, and I can do all the splicing. Absolutely worthwhile to invest in the training series and some tools, and you can really make yourself an asset. Overall, I was incredibly happy with the training series. You're going to learn things from Nick that you really can't learn anywhere else, with the exception of like a one-on-one session with a splicer, similar experience to Nick, which is incredibly hard to come by. Overall, I was incredibly happy with the training course. I would definitely recommend it to anyone and everyone. Check the description below for a link to the product page at TreeStuff.com. You can use the discount code online to receive 7% off your entire order at TreeStuff.com. And as always, have a good one, humans.